Hello and welcome. Dom Hale here for Mining Journal, Mining Magazine, and Australia Mining Monthly's 2024 Tailings Report. I'm here today with two gentlemen from SRK Consulting, Tailings and Geotechnical Engineer Diego Cobos, and Senior Civil Geotechnical Engineering Consultant Raul Norambuena. SRK is a leading international mining consultancy firm, and Diego and Raul have come on to give their expert insights into the new GISTM-infused tailings management landscape. Diego, Raul, great to have you both here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for the invite.
So, Diego, let me start off by asking you, what would you describe as the most pressing challenges for mining companies as they seek to adhere to the global industry standard on tailings management and take a more risk-informed approach to tailings storage facility design, construction, operation, and closure?
Very well. There are several challenges to get our existing operations up to speed with GISTM. And these are particularly sensitive for older facilities or what we call legacy sites that were obviously not designed to current standards or codes. For these types of facilities or projects, the shortcomings are widely varying and can include a lack of construction and early operation records, for example, as-built drawings, quality control and quality assurance data, monitoring data, geotechnical information, performance reports, and something that is really important is deviation reports, right? So that means that if for some reason something changes during the design and the construction and the operation of the project, a very detailed record has to be kept of this, and when we don't, that's where we get issues down the road, right? Another one of the challenges is lack of a defined corporate governance structure, which obviously not all the companies had before the implementation of GISTM. Outdating design criteria, and I think we're going to touch base on this design criteria issue quite a bit during this interview. Regulations or local state of practices of engineering design before the GISTM. That's also one of the challenges we see in our projects. There's obviously a big difference between the profile of the mining company, a junior, mid-sized, or a major mining company. Obviously, will have different approaches and particularly different budgets, right? We tend to see larger companies having a little bit of an advantage or be sitting on a better starting point and can prioritize better, right? And so those are what we see as the main challenges, to get our clients on board GISTM.
Understood. Thank you, Diego. And Raul, where do you see the biggest tests being for the industry as it seeks to be GISTM compliant?
Yeah, as Diego mentioned, I would say it's probably for the junior or mid-sized companies that are engaged with ICMM, and they are committed to eventually follow the full or adhere to the GISTM, and that involves a lot of I would say restructuring of the internal corporate structure that has been historically on each mine or in the corporate offices, but and also that involves an extra budget that they need to account for. So probably that different scenario is probably one they struggle a little bit, and that's where, and we're gonna also talk about it later, it's the EOR role to help guiding this path on the operation in both the mining company. That I think it is in my opinion, what would be a bit challenging.
Okay, well, staying with you, Raul, do you think we need then new and distinct codes and guidelines to facilitate the design and operation of non-conventional facilities, such as dry stack tailings, informed by those currently in existence, perhaps not being entirely fit for purpose?
Yeah, no, we definitely do need new codes and guidelines for these non-conventional facilities or operations. In my knowledge, there is not a specific code particularly for dry stack operations or filter tailings operation, as we can mention. For example, yeah, filter facilities do not impound water generally. So I think is the main difference on what we call dams. And currently, most of the guidelines that we see from Canada and other countries are very focused on, or they consider the whole facilities as dams, as water containing or tailing containing liquid material that could flow. But for example, dry stack is a completely different story. They might not be susceptible to overtopping event, for example, which is a kind of a failure scenario for some of these dams. So yeah, the design criteria should reflect how the facility works, and particularly the specific challenges. So yeah, I would say the at the same time the codes are kind of difficult to develop. Takes a lot of time. They need to go through public consultant expert review. They need to go through different process to get approved, and sometimes hit different, either if you are a major or a minor mining company.
And Diego, then, what are your thoughts on that? Is there a need for additional direction and guidelines?
Agreed, absolutely. We can't, as Raul mentioned, we can't name everything a dam. And the reason why we are designing these non-conventional facilities and spending more money on the process of the upstream of the tailings facility, filtering or thickening or doing innovations in tailings transport and handling, is so when we get to the actual facility, the tailings will behave better, more stable. They're not as flowable, and probably they're not as liquefiable, right? So that all that stuff is reflected into hopefully a lower risk profile. And so we need a different approach to characterize these facilities and to assess these facilities. I'm sorry, and yeah, so the proper codes are needed to reflect what we expect these facilities to behave, and not necessarily just putting one single hat for all of our criteria and our designs and our classifications and our risk analysis.
Okay, so Diego, to what extent then do you think the engineer of record and accountable executive roles will be transformative? Is the impact of their existence at scale already being felt?
Yes, the engineer of record role is nothing really new in the civil engineering practice, right? It is relatively new for us in the mining industry, and so far what we've seen is that it has allowed to reduce the risk through real accountability in what we do every day. And there's an important note here that through our EOR interactions and getting our projects aligned with the GISTM, we are already seeing great improvements on tailings management, and that client to engineer of record or consultant interaction, and all that stemming STM. Even some of our clients that are not necessarily in ICMM have requested us to help them align the project with the standard again, even though they're not required to. So we are already seeing the positive impact of these guidelines because the clients and the industry is obviously realizing that here towards reducing the harm and understanding the risk and creating robust enough knowledge bases. And again, I highlight the importance of projects that are not obliged to GISTM are very interested on getting their projects not officially compliant, but into our GISTM principles and tasks.
Understood. Well, Raul, then, what's your view on the impact of these roles with their clearly delineated responsibilities?
Yeah, as Diego mentioned, the EOR role is not new in the civil industry, and has proven to reduce the risk and potential critical catastrophic failures in different in building bridges and etc. And for tailings world, I would say that the first comment or mention that EOR role should be designated on tailings operation is after the Mount Paul event on 2014. And I think it's very sensible recommendation considering the complexity and the long-lasting nature of TSFs. We go through the design, operation that could last several decades even, and closure that could go even longer. So having an EOR, thinking particularly on the EOR, is very relevant considering it's a very good tool to provide accountability, but also continuity to these projects and the operational assets for the mining companies. And well, we're going to in the details of the EOR is we consider is an individual, but needs to be endorsed by a consulting or a consulting firm or consulting practice, including many other disciplines, because tailing facilities are not it's not as simple that structural or very defined. Primarily, there are many aspects such as environmental, hydrotechnical, piping, process, geology, etc. So we need a multidisciplinary firm and a team that could support the EOR. And the EOR is also not like couldn't work alone. So he needs this integral corporate structure, including the accountable executive, the responsible tailings facility engineer, the RTFE, and of course, the independent technical review board. I think those four elements within the corporate structure gives a very strong connection and independent point of view to oversee this critical asset, the facility, to provide a better coverage and engagement.
Okay, well, look, moving on then, Raul, what recent case study would you highlight that best communicates SRK's proven capacity to advance tailings management practices?
I would like to mention a client that we have in Mexico. I think Diego has another case study that probably worth to mention, but it's this big client that we have in Mexico, has like several tens of facilities around Mexico, and most of them were built in the early 20th century and operated through several years and even closed before GISTM. It's a very long history of the traditions and way of doing things, state of practice, that GISTM came to shake a bit and restructure or forcing restructure of things. So we've been working with the client for a long time now, since 2020, in order to move forward and get closer to GISTM, and that has been very challenging and very helpful even for us to understand what are actually the limitations and how other clients, for example, that are major mining companies located in mining districts that are already have codes and standards that are required to go beyond what we see on the GISTM even. So yeah, I think we have this proven experience of how we can start from scratch or having something very different from what GISTM is pushing forward and moving into. It's a big effort for the mining company. It's a big effort for the consulting firm in order to row together towards this goal. But I think it's possible, and I would say the clients in overall happy and more engaged, more aware on the risk, more aware on what would be the consequences. So I think they appreciate it.
Interesting stuff. And Diego, then, what case study would you draw the spotlight onto that exemplifies SRK's force for good credentials around tailings management?
Sure. This is another pre-GISTM involvement. So it's a project on the Colombian Andes. We have been involved in this project since 2019 and personally since 2012. And this is on Western Colombia. It's a dry stack facility that we designed on a high precipitation and a high seismicity setting with very interesting geological and very challenging social issues. The key here, the highlight here is that the filtration and placing of the tailings were designed in such a manner so we could achieve a self-supporting structure, not a dam. It's a dry stack. And all this was a sort of a steep learning curve for the client and for us as well, and took lots of resources to get all the stakeholders on board with this new for us in Colombia operational philosophy, right? It's not building a containment structure and depositing slurry tailings, right? This is more of a construction process, is more involved. There's a lot more quality control required. And so it was a bit of a change in philosophy for the client, for us, and especially for the authorities. The local authorities hadn't seen many of these facilities, so it was a lot of education and a lot of back and forth with the environmental authorities so they could understand the project and understand the benefits of having this type of facility on, again, a high precipitation and high seismicity area. This, again, was the first facility of its kind in the country. And despite these issues, we have managed to build and operate a safe and stable tailings facility. SRK's contribution spans essentially the whole life cycle. So from different stages of design, the environmental licensing, early construction operations, quality assurance. And now we have, for the past year and a half, approximately, begun helping the client align with GISTM and are now retained as engineer of record. The project, again, was designed and permitted prior to GISTM, so there were some key topics to deal with as we move forwards to compliance, especially with community engagement, right? The most important thing that we can do as consultants and engineers of record and quality control officials for this project and for many other projects is to help the client develop strong enough knowledge base that can be used by different stakeholders and have that readily available for use. And personally, the highlight here was that we were able to achieve this by having a dynamic and diverse team within SRK, involved in offices from North America, US, and Canada, also our office in Colombia, and many of the LATAM teams in Peru and Chile as well. And so far, it has been a success. We were able to go from design to permitting, construction, operation, and we are now beginning the early stages of progressive closure of the facility, although it is working and we have approximately 15 more years of life of mine. We are already closing the early stages of the Tailings facility.
Well, great examples. Thank you both for those. So, Diego, are there any new technologies and innovative solutions you could point to that, in your view, have the capacity to revolutionize the design, the construction, the operation, and the ongoing monitoring of TSFs?
Sure. Data acquisition and data management have to be what we focus on for the next few years on tailings management and tailings safety, right? Digital twins, telemetry, and advanced monitoring, output management, for example, the dashboards that many of us are using now, are shaping up to be the next big tool to visualize and manage TSF data and improve our understanding of the performance, right? Many of these technologies are not new. However, their applications to our tailings facilities are, right? Real-time geotechnical and hydraulic data is key for the evaluation of the performance of our facilities, and so we can do risk-informed decisions, right? And if it's the case, we have enough time to potentially activate or early activation of TARPs, which are trigger action response when they're necessary. And the overall goal of this is to reduce response time for the operators to respond or to mitigate any of the problems that may arise: water stability, deformations, erosion. Whenever that happens, we need rapid response. And so having a robust enough monitoring system that can allow us to do quick responses is key for us here.
And what about yourself, Raul? Which new technologies or innovations are you most excited about?
Yeah, I think we are in the age of information, as Diego mentioned. There is so many different sources. Some are free, some you have to pay a little bit, but in general are very approachable tools that us as a consultant becoming very in a lot of added value. So we rely a lot on satellite imagery. We rely a lot on drone flights. Now drones are like everywhere, and you can take very detailed, accurate photographies of your site in a very regular basis, for example. So those are the little examples that were not available 10 years ago, but now it's something that you can enter to a website and get some satellite image from yesterday in your site located, I don't know, 5,000 kilometers away, for example. So are not new, but every time it's more accessible to everybody. The remote sensing technologies, such as this telemetry, also I think is very valuable. And I would say not only on the area of monitoring, the new technologies are always improving for the facilities, but I would say in the processing for our tailings. So on the previous question about like dry stacking and non-conventional, I think we have seen a lot of innovations on terms of how we can process tailings, making them drier or easier to dry and safer in general. So that's something that we have seen in our clients, like they are moving, they understand the value of these new technologies. They are a bit hesitant at first, but they have the opportunity to do some trial and errors and understand the benefits. And the long run, they probably would be saving some in terms of risk and some in terms of like budgets and etc. So yeah, I'm excited on see what is coming, but it's been a lot of changes, a lot of implementation. Even myself, sometimes I get overwhelmed with all of that.
Understood. And so finally then, Raul, do you believe that better sharing of TSF knowledge that's been accrued industry-wide would make a big difference in reducing risks to as low as reasonably practicable? How is SRK helping to improve TSF knowledge bases?
We believe definitely is 100% accurate. And I would say the overall intent of GISTM is to create a solid and transferable knowledge base that is part of the whole governance team, and essentially kind of the EOR has the custody of this knowledge share and need to be transferred to the following consultant or the following EOR in a good manner. So the main goal of this is try to minimize, and probably with the bigger target of having a zero harm. So experience for us is our best teacher. We need to document, and what we do is publish, not only try not to publish only the failures or the downsides of what we do, but also the success cases, the case studies that actually work, and let other consultant, other clients to see that there are big opportunities depending on whether you are in a desert or you are in the jungle or you are having problem with water scarcity, etc. You can take advantage of that. So I see the mining industry more engaged on their own tailings operations. I would say as a result of the GISTM, and I think there are so many instances such as conference, training programs, webinars, and where consultants, vendors, mining companies, even governmental institutions can get together and share their issues and realities. So I think is a very important thing. That would be my take on can we do better if we share the knowledge? And I think 100%.
Well, thank you for that, Raul. And Diego, what are your thoughts on whether the mining industry could do more to share knowledge for the greater good of all?
Right. Just one quick comment on that, adding to Raul's points. We are part of Tailings. This is a foundation that advances the state of the art and the state of the practice in earth resources engineering, and especially mine tailings management. Right. And we do that through strategic partnerships with the industry, consulting, and the academia. Right. These partnerships will be fostered through Tailings Business Industry Partners Advisory Board. And what we do in SRK is to promote all of our different practices and all of our professionals to engage in conferences, engage in workshops and courses, and to present, as Raul was saying, not only the bad, but also let's highlight the good stuff, to present technical publications in conferences, and to interact with academia, and so to go out and do research with local universities and help fund their geotechnical laboratories, so we can advance the practice, and we can try to understand our known unknowns that we cover our projects. Right, so we have 3 to 4 year undergrad students for internship programs, R&D with universities, as I just mentioned, and also partnering up with other consulting companies.
Understood. And then, so that's SRK's input, but in terms of sort of the wider industry thrust to do more to share knowledge, do you think more could be done?
Always. I think there's always room for improvement. There's always room for better practices. Sometimes it's hard, but I would say it is our role to keep moving forward and guide our clients to a better world, to a better, a safer, zero harm environment.
Great stuff. Well, look, thank you very much, both of you, for your insights today. I've been speaking with Diego Cobos and Raul Norambuena at SRK Consulting. I'm Dom Hale. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, Dom.
Pleasure.